Our next exponent example has a lot of negative signs. We're going to take our time, work through them carefully, and end up with an expression that has positive exponents only. Here's what we have. We have this large expression times a smaller expression. In the larger expression, we have negative 2 times x to the negative 9 times y to the negative 8 divided by 16 times x to the negative 5, y to the negative 6, y to the positive 4, a positive number, huh? And then on the outside, times x cubed, y to the negative 8. We will follow the same procedure again, where we start by working on the inside and getting rid of anything we can. We have a negative coefficient this time, negative 2, but it will divide into 16. I like to take the negative sign along with me so that I'm only tracking one number. I don't like to leave like a negative 1 divided by 8, extra work. Let's see, we have two occurrences of the variable x. It looks like we're going to use the quotient rule because they are on opposite sides. And the variable y, also some quotient rule work. So we'll work on that larger expression. We now have x to the negative 9 minus a negative 5, y to the negative 8. Need a little more room here. Let's slide that up. Let's see, we're subtracting a negative 6 and we're subtracting a 4. You'll notice that in these examples, I like to keep the same order all the time, where I take the exponential on the top minus the exponential minus the power on the bottom. Again, it's not always the fastest, but it is pretty reliable. It gives you a method that works every time. Let's see, and we're left with negative 8 in the denominator. We need some parentheses. Raised to the negative 2 times x cubed, y to the negative 8, which we're just bringing along for the ride right now. Okay, working more on the inside. Negative 9 plus 5 is negative 4. Let's see, that'll be a plus. Negative 8 plus 6 is negative 2. Minus 4 is negative 6. Y to the negative 6 divided by negative 8, whole thing raised to the negative 2 power, and times x cubed y to the negative 8. If you want to drop those parentheses, you can. If you want to keep them, you can. Since there's no power attached to them, we don't have to worry about any of those rules. All right, we're ready to lose the parentheses. So let's see. Negative 2 times negative 4 gives us x to the positive 8 power. And you can see how the powers often change signs, so leave the issue of figuring out the final sign for the power where that exponential goes to the end. Negative 6 times negative 2 gives us a 12, so we have y to the 12th power. And this is tricky. We have a negative 8 raised to the negative 2 power. The correct way to write that is to leave the negative 8 in parentheses, because we're raising that entire negative 8 to the negative 2 power. It is not correct, so don't write this down in your notes, but it is not correct to do that. All right? And if you're using your calculators to calculate values for things like 8 squared or 5 to the 5th power, you have to watch out when you have negative signs that you're using your calculator correctly. You can request help from any tutor or your teacher if you need to work a little help working with your calculator on that. Okay. Let's see. And I almost dropped times x cubed y to the negative 8. Squeeze that in below the red marks. Okay. Let me rewrite that because it's a little messy. X to the 8, y to the 12, divided by negative 8 to the negative 2 times x cubed y to the negative 8. Now we are ready to combine things on the outside. Well, we have two occurrences of x. So we'll want to, remember this is over 1, so it's in the numerator. We'll want to put together the x's. We'll add the powers since they're on the same side. We have two occurrences of y. Same drill. Okay. So what we have is x to the 8 plus 3, y to the 12 plus a negative 8, still divided by negative 8 to the negative 2. I won't do anything with the number yet, just bring it along. And now we have x to the 11th power, y to the 4th power, divided by negative 8 to the negative 2. Make our powers positive. Well, 11 already is positive, so we don't have to move x. We don't have to move y to the 4th because 4 is positive. We need to move the negative 8 because the power is negative. This goes to the numerator. Moving this across the fraction bar will not change the sign in front of the number. It will leave us with a negative 8 raised to the positive 2 power times x to the 11th and y to the 4th. Finally, we are ready to work with that negative in front of the 8 to evaluate the number. Last step, numbers. Okay. Negative 8 squared. Well, a negative number raised to an even power will be a positive number. So I can write this as a positive 8 squared, and that will be correct. Or I can evaluate that as a 64 times x to the 11th times y to the 4th. Both of these answers are correct. At this point, you may be asking yourself, how am I to check my work? Very good question. It's not easy to do on these more complicated problems. The best thing is really to do it twice. If you get the same answer twice, trust your work that you have the right answer. If you don't, ask for help. And that is the conclusion of this example.